floor is yours.
Welcome everyone to this exciting and empowering session. I'm Diana Philip, Deputy CEO at JA Europe and the EU Code Week Coordinator. Today, we come together for a purpose that shapes the future, inspiring, preparing, and equipping millions of girls and boys with the digital skills they need to lead, innovate, and create. We know that digital skills are no longer optional. They are the key to unlocking opportunities, driving change, and shaping the world of tomorrow. As part of the EU Code Week Girls in Digital campaign, we are here to break barriers, spark curiosity, and show every young mind that the digital world is theirs to explore, build, and create. And who better to guide us on this journey than Linda Liukas, a true pioneer, a storyteller, and an advocate for making technology playful, accessible, and empowering for all. Linda is an author. She's an illustrator, an educator from Helsinki, Finland. With her Hello Ruby children book and philosophy, she brings a Nordic playful perspective to sometimes serious world of computer science. The book is translated in 40 languages and sometimes asks a very serious question. What else is there to technology education than learn to code? She will tell us much more about that. And she's also running a playground in Helsinki where kids can learn how computers operate with a single screen. Linda, I want that playground in all the European countries. That's really amazing.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to learning more about it. But let's dive in, be inspired, and take a step forward to the future where every girl and boy has the confidence and skills to shape the digital age. So, Linda, the floor is yours to inspire all of us.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm gonna flip on my slides in a second. Here we go. And I'm gonna get going. And I was asked to present a little bit on what it feels like to be a teenage girl in technology because, believe it or not, I used to be one. And this story, it actually takes me back all the way to when I was 15 years old. Over here, you can see a few pictures from that era. Because when I was 15, I wore Caterpillar boots, these huge, oversized brown hoodies, and glasses so thick it felt like I was seeing the world through a fish lens. I spent my evenings role-playing Star Wars on an online forum and my weekends obsessively redecorating my room, cutting out magazine collages, printing song lyrics, taping up Polaroids. And if you had asked me back then, I wouldn't have said, this is me preparing for a career in technology. But looking back, that's what I did. These obsessions, these ideas, they weren't just random teenage flings or things I was excited about. They were dots. I just hadn't yet figured out how they connected. And I think that's the thing about careers, about life in general. The dots only start to make sense when you look backward. As mentioned, today I'm a children's book author, I'm an illustrator, and I'm an educator. And my big mission in life is to help generations of children to have a more curious, more fearless, more creative relationship with technology. Sometimes this happens through books and stories, but sometimes this happens through play acting different parts of a computer to really grasp and learn how the CPU or the RAM or the ROM works. Sometimes it takes the form of building a YouTube out of a cardboard and performing the different kinds of recommendation algorithms inside of it. And sometimes, like Diana mentioned, it takes the form of designing and building an entire computer-themed playground in Helsinki. And the secret for this kind of a career, the secret for all of this, I use all the world building, communication, and storytelling skills that when I was a teenager, was already practicing without ever considering it. One of the things that really pains me is how easily we dismiss teenage girls. If something is colorful, emotional, a little bit excessive, it's always deemed as such a teenage girl thing. But you teenage girls, you are aware, you are intentional, and you are skillful. And to me, the best things in my career, they actually echo a lot of my teenage girlhood. The way I madly fell in love with the then Vice President Al Gore and made a website for him and learned to code. The way I would role play all the evenings on Star Wars and do these microeconomies and learned how to really build an entire world. By following some of my personal idols like the Moomin author Tove Jansson, the Finnish poet Edith Södergran, or the Marimekko founder Armi Ratia, I started to really trust my own inner voice. A few years ago, I was in this technology event and I met a group of teenage girls. And there was this idea that, oh, they are teenage girls, they must be working on something like designing the next big dating application. But nothing could be further away from the truth. Teenage girls, they were talking about climate change, dementia, human rights. They weren't just consuming the internet. They were thinking about how to rebuild it. And when I look at teenage girls today, I don't just see the future. Of course, I see the future in them, but in addition to the future, I see a constellation. There's this idea that has been bugging me for many, many years, and it comes from the author John Berger. And what Berger said in his essay collection, The Portraits, I think this is from, he says that storytellers were the people who came up with constellations. He said that for the first 1,500 years of human history, the night sky was an unknown scattering of random dots. But it was storytellers who came in and really started to make these invisible lines between stars. They gave them shape and they gave them identity. And the constellations, they didn't change the night sky in any way, nor did the darkness surrounding the stars change. But the constellations did change how humans interpreted the night sky. And I think about this idea all the time, especially when I look at today's teenage girls. Because careers, ideas, and even technologies, they never look and start as straight lines. They always start as scattered dots. And when we tell girls that you need to be practical, you need to be linear, you need to be realistic, we are failing them because careers don't happen in straight lines. And that's not how they work. That's not even how technology works. That's not how technological progress works. And most importantly, that's not how teenage girls work. So what if instead of asking young women to pick one career, we started to ask them to draw their own career constellation? And this idea of what it would mean if really girls started to come into computer science and coding, what would it look like as a field if it was designed by teenage girls? I keep thinking about it. And I don't mean only that we would get equal amount of teenage girls to participate in tech field. I mean if teenage girls really shaped technology culture with their values and ideas. Because what we have today, the desktops, the folders and files, they are metaphors that come to us from the 1950s. When we use a computer, we're essentially using a 1950s office with its gray lining cabinets, its manila envelopes with its rigid hierarchies and endless paperwork. And that's not the reality where teenage girls live today. That's not how they organize their lives. That's not how they will organize their work when they grow up. What I love about teenage girls is they think in overlapping layers. They remix and they do real-time updates. Teenage girls of today, their world is a mix of Pinterest mood boards, BeReal snapshots, Discord channels, AI filters, and TikTok edits. It's a constant flow of ideas, aesthetics, and emotions. So what if programming field really looked into the teenage girl world and really tried to understand and try to respect it as it is? What if coding felt more like editing a TikTok video where you drag and remix and stitch ideas together instead of practicing things by heart and just rote learning? What if programming languages used the word what if instead of if then? What if statements were the main way of working with a program and curiosity was valued over correctness? I don't know if programming would be more collaborative. It would feel more like a group chat where multiple voices can build and respond and react in the real time if more teenage girls were involved in building these tools. And maybe instead of a cold blinking terminal, the interface we would write code in would feel more like a diary, a space where each line of code tells a story. Because I believe if programs were designed really by teenage girls, they wouldn't be all about efficiency. Programming would be about expressiveness, it would be about intuition, and it would be about being alive. So what I do in some of my workshops is I ask young women to map their careers on this worksheet as a constellation. And I try to really remind them that the world is so much bigger. The world is so much more interesting than who has the longest Snapchat streak or who has the most comments on Instagram. We have never ever lived in a time where top universities in the world, they openly share biotechnology or Renaissance studies online for free, regardless of what the student's age is. And I think it requires curiosity to really tap into these opportunities. So the young girls, they take their pencils, they take the worksheet, and they start to really map out their ideas and passions and interests and things they've heard about technology, skills they might have or skills they might not yet have, without really worrying if these skills or ideas fit in. And what happens is rather beautiful. We start to try to look for patterns within these dots. We start to see connections. We start to recognize ways their dots form something really, really unexpected. What I don't do is I don't ask them, what is your dream job in technology? I ask them instead, what are your dots? Because that's how innovation happens. I believe not by choosing one lane, but really mapping out an entire universe. And this is what I hope to see young girls do all over Europe. Think about their own passions and interests, see how it connects to the world of technology. I believe this would have a radical effect on today's world. If today's teenage girls had built the internet, it wouldn't be just algorithms deciding what you see. It would be curated mood boards, overlapping conversations. It would be a system built for emotion and exploration, not only efficiency. And I believe that's exactly what the next era of technology needs. Because the next big breakthroughs in AI, ethics, and design won't come from making things more efficient. That's a path we've already been through. The next big breakthroughs will come from making things more human. And I want to conclude with a few ideas and thoughts of what this means for today's teenage girls and also their parents and the educators listening in. Teenage girls watching this right now, I see you. I see your Polaroids and your playlist, your late night Google rabbit holes, your color-coded notes, your deep obsessive love for things no one else quite gets. Those are your dots. And one day, looking back, you'll be able to connect them. You'll see how the connections merge and how they will form a career. And to the grown-ups in the room, to those parents and educators listening in today, the next time you see a teenage girl obsessing over something, don't dismiss it. Don't roll your eyes and say, oh, that's a teenage girl passion. Ask her about it. The internet enables a whole new kind of self-expression. And a teenager's Instagram account, it can tell a fragmented, beautiful, and multifaceted story about one of the strangest and weirdest phases of a human life. we ought to be more curious about what teenagers are doing online. Because those obsessions are the beginning of a constellation. And the future is a teenage girl's sky. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Linda. That was so inspiring. It was so nice to see how you talk so easy about technology, about constellation, about connecting dots, about your passions. Really, really beautiful. I think we have some questions that are coming in live. We are also seeing questions that will appear in the chat. I wanted to start with one. You talked about careers not being straight path, but constellations. Looking back, what are some dots in your own constellation that felt random at the time, but makes so much perfect sense now?
Well, when I was preparing this talk, I went to the attic of our parents' country home, and my mom would help me find like a lot of these very, very passionate projects over there. So I was interested, among the things I mentioned, I was interested in politics. I wanted to be a politician, a diplomat. I wanted to be a writer, an author. I even had like the books to apply for to study social sciences in university. And I felt that the society always told me that you need to be one thing or the other. You need to be very clear and intentional about what you want to do as a career when you're, say, 18 years old. And that's not true. And when I look about like at those passions and interests I had as a teenage girl, one stood out like above everything else. So I was really interested in coding things, but I wasn't interested in computer science or coding for the sake of coding. I was interested in coding because I wanted this tool to express myself, to make this fan website for my huge crush of the day. And I never in a billion years would have imagined that this project would turn out to be kind of the big thing that led me into computers as a field and led me to study then computer science later. It was just something that I was really excited about as a 13-year-old. But it's not only technology skills, it can be other skills as well that for a long time feel unrelated and sort of foreign. So for example, I studied French in school for, I don't know, 14, 15 years. And everyone told me that if you study French for a long, long time, you can't study the A-level math, like the higher math skills, that those two are not compatible. Those two take so much effort that you can't do the both. And that's the reason why I never did the more complicated math in high school, but I chose French instead. And then I absolutely never used French in my life. And if you had asked me 4 years ago, do I need French studies in my life? I would have said no. And then I moved to France, where I actually need to use French to have my family life work. I need to communicate with my kids' nursery school teachers. I need to organize like all kinds of things in French. And all of a sudden, this random dot I spent 13 years like studying and cramming turned out to be one of the most important skills I have today. And I'm nearly 40, so it took a long time for that small dot to appear and kind of make a part of the constellation I'm building. So I think the beauty of when you're learning things and you're passionate about them, it is you never know how they are gonna connect, at what time, in what part of the world something new is going to appear. And I think it's just important to be curious about the world, to have interests and honestly, like if you're not interested in anything, not even like a small thing, that's the thing that would worry me quite a lot. Not the fact if you don't know or have all the answers when you're 15 or 18.
That's so true, and I'm really relating to that. What all you said, I'm thinking of my own dots
Yeah,
and
I want to hear about your dot.
exactly because I think that I was fortunate that my parents put me in an informatics schools when I was young,
Mm.
and I'm looking back now. that really drives my interest today for digital skills, for coding.
Yeah,
That's why I've put all this movement together, because with
yeah,
ambitions of impacting 25 million girls and boys in the next years under Code Week, you really need a movement and a lot of people. But those skills, which at the time I was wondering, I'm the fourth girl in a class of 30
wow.
boys. Why am I here? And it makes
Yeah.
so much perfect sense. So totally right. And it's nice to see them as dots in a big constellations, because they come back to you afterwards.
And yeah, I think the beauty of Code Week, honestly, is also the fact that you don't need to be like, you don't need to be only a coder in your life. It's just important that you get that experience. You have those moments in when you're a young person that, hey, like, this is something I can do. This is something I can belong to. It doesn't need to be a full-formed career. And to be super honest, like my coding skills were not very good in school, and nor did they be nor are they today like the best coding skills ever. And I never introduced myself as like a really good programmer, but it's a really important part of the career I've built and the constellation I've built. And that experience from an early, like teenage years, that left that fearlessness and curiosity towards technology that I think shaped my constellation in a really important manner.
Great. Well, I have a question that really follows up of what we discuss. It's what are your favorite ways to help people connect the dots between unrelated interests?
Yeah. Well, I like the worksheet, and we'll have a little announcement on that later because it really helps you to like take a piece of paper and a pen and write down like what are the interests you have. Because when you see it visually in front of you, you will notice things that belong together and things that like obviously might not belong together. So once I had this girl who was really into oboe playing, the instrument, and then she had heard about this thing called 3D printing, but she didn't really know what it was about. And then just by like the fact that we were together in a group and we started talking to one another, she really got into this idea that, hey, like, what if I started like 3D printing oboes and what kind of sounds would they make? And honestly, it might not be that that becomes her career, but I think that spark, that interest, and that curiosity, supported by all the other participants in the group who gave her like more information, like, hey, you can go to this local library to try out 3D printing, or I know this website where you can learn about how instruments are made. That's the thing I'm looking for. So maybe my favorite ways is like make the discussion as tangible and real as possible, list out your passions and interests, but then also make it collaborative so that you're not like trying to solve everything by yourself. Involve your friends, involve school teachers, involve career counselors, and ask questions, ask tons and tons of questions. The beauty of today is also the teenagers today have generative AI, they have large language models, they can ask relentless amounts of questions from like a very, very patient like instructor, namely ChatGPT or Claude or Le Chat or someone else. So there is this whole like class of advisors out there that didn't exist when we were young. But yeah, working together and making it as tangible as possible, I think, is how we start to map out our strengths and our career plans.
Very good. And that really relates to another question that I received. And there were some people asking whether we are recording this. Yes, we are recording it. We are also putting it on YouTube so people can watch it afterwards. We really want to give the opportunity to listen to the beautiful story of Linda and also all her knowledge. Linda, the question I got here is that many people feel pressure to choose a career
Mm,
early on. And how do you really help them to embrace uncertainty and really look at the exploration and
yeah.
be curious?
So I work on this on the board of this programming school in Helsinki, and we have a lot of young people in their 20s who are now they've studied maybe for a year or two, and now all of a sudden there's this huge first the hiring freeze, then big layoffs in tech companies, and then this notion that artificial intelligence is going to take over the programmer's job. And these people, they are rightly panicking right now. They say, have I made the wrong choice in becoming a programmer? Like, should I switch careers? Like this huge amount of uncertainty that goes even into a career in technology, which for the past 10 years, it was kind of a given that if you rigorously study technology, you're going to be okay. But now, again, there's this like fear around technology. But what I tell these young people is the same lesson I wish someone told me when I was in my 20s, because you see, like, these things happen. They happen over and over again. And technology goes through these boom and bust cycles. Economies go through boom and bust cycles. And it's so frustrating and scary when you're a young person and you're seeing this for the first time to believe that there is going to be the next time. And it's unfair. I really understand and I feel the pain for young Europeans who are trying to get their first jobs right now in this economy, in this job market, which in many countries is really rough. So I'll tell you a story. When I was in my 20s, I was studying in business school in Helsinki. And at the time, Nokia, which might ring a bell for some of you, it used to do these mobile phones that were state of the art, really amazing mobile phones, were a huge part of the Finnish GDP. So a lot of young, talented people wanted to go work for Nokia, and I was among them. So when I was in university, the thing I wanted to do most of all was go work for Nokia and be a part of the legacy and technology culture they were building. And then Nokia started to decline, and everyone panicked and said, this is over, this is the end, nothing is going to happen after this, and like a career in technology is doomed to failure. But what happened instead is that instead of one massive Nokia that was a talent vacuum, we got Angry Birds, we got Supercell, we got like this whole ecosystem of smaller startups and companies, research organizations, artistic places, and of course the existing Nokia that spinned into doing something completely different from mobile phones. And having gone through this sort of change, I have much more trust in the future. I know there's going to be a time when like technology is going to be a very good career option. And I think it's really worth it, even for the teenagers of today, to really stick to it and really think about not technology as your only option, but as a part of your constellation. Because in every single technological revolution, there has been a time when new jobs will start to emerge, and they will not look the same as they did in the 1990s or early 2000s or the 1980s. They will look a little bit different. There will be new skills that are required from all of us. But those ideas of creativity and curiosity and fearlessness when it comes to technology, they will for sure remain the same. So to conclude and answer the question, if you're uncertain about where you are in your life right now, if you're not certain if the career choice you've taken is the one you want to do, you can balance it out. You can, if you're in tech already, you can try something else for a little bit, like maybe a hobby, maybe like a course, maybe something else in addition to kind of smooth you over this this phase we are right now in tech hiring. And if you're not in technology and you feel frustrated in the career you're doing, or you feel pressured into making choice too early, take one course in programming or computing, do a few of the Code Week activities, try out code.org. Any of these like nonprofit organizations offer wonderful pathways into programming, and just try it out and see if you like it.
Thank you, Linda. Well, I do have a related question here from Laura, who's saying, any advice for somebody who's applying to university with a major in computer science and then later on wants to combine it with finance?
Oh, beautiful. Well, I think you're going to be absolutely beloved by the finance market. I don't know if I have any tangible advice, but there's a lot of good biographies of people who've done exactly the combination you have. One that comes to my mind immediately is Jim Simons, who founded Renaissance Technologies, which is this one of the first sort of these hedge fund algorithmic tech companies that works in Wall Street and finance. And I'm not suggesting it because you would want to copy paste his career, but I'm suggesting it because he would only hire computer scientists and mathematicians, not people only from finance backgrounds. So having that combination of computer science and finance is really like an interesting and cool combination. And I don't know the realm of finance well enough to like tell you exactly what are the skills, but I would wager that either you want to become a really good programmer in the field, really good at thinking about the quant stuff, like the quantitative stuff, or you want to be someone who's really good with people. So someone who's really qualitatively strong and who can form relationships and work together with a lot of different people. So kind of picking picking which side your constellation goes to would be my advice. And then reading, because there's a lot of really cool biographies out there for you.
Thank you. I also have a different kind of questions from Veronica. She said that we have many initiatives supporting girls in tech for over a decade, but the number of IT female students or female IT specialists is not rising much. What do you think are the main reasons that change is so slow? And this is so important question because it relates with code, because here we made a pledge on trying to inspiring more girls to really get into careers in digital. So what's your view on this?
Well, I think we are in a macroeconomic situation, first of all. And I think it's sometimes really unfair to judge only the percentage of women in workforce, because as a young mother for a kid, I recognize that there's a lot of things in society that help or don't help women in the workforce. So it's not only a question of your major, it's a question of like how the entire society supports and helps us. I'm sometimes worry of like saying that go work in tech. And that's why in my speech, for instance, I talked a little bit more about like, what if girls really reshaped the field of technology? Because we've all heard about very toxic stories about women entering the tech workforce and then just being completely burned out or like disillusioned, frustrated with the existing structures and existing workforces. And doing that change, like really starting those new kinds of companies, those new kinds of initiatives, it takes time and it takes continuous enforcement of ideas. And for instance, in my case, like I just read this story I had, or interview I had given in 2015, where I said that I wish there would be this art exhibition where you could crawl inside of a computer. And that was 9 years ago. And now there's a playground where you can actually do that. But it took me 9 years to convince other people that, hey, like this is the kind of world we want to do, because people would ask like, playgrounds and programming, what do they have to do with one another? And can you really teach these ideas without a screen? And wouldn't it be better to like sit in front of a computer to learn about coding and so forth and so forth? So I think it's patience. It's been only 10 years. It feels like a long time, but it's been a decade of systemic work we've been doing in Europe. And then the second thing is, I think when we start to see like companies really started by women, I think that's when we start to see the really big change happening. When women start to really project the kind of world they want to see in technology, not only trying to fit into existing structures within technology. And we don't know when that's going to happen. It might be like another decade, but it might be much, much faster. That's what we saw with the decline of Nokia. It was much faster than anyone anticipated, how quickly new companies started to form. So maybe there already in the audience, there's a little girl or a young woman who has a spark in their head, and it will take them only a couple of years to really start building that world.
And you have an amazing example yourself with the playground, how you changed the world in a very, very simple, fun, engaging way that young people can look into it. Can you tell us a little bit more? How did you come up with that idea?
Yeah,
How are
yeah.
young
So
people reacting to it?
So the idea, like I mentioned, it was 10 years ago to make an art exhibition. But then during the pandemic, when everything else in Finland closed down except for the playgrounds, it really dawned on me that public spaces are places where people from all walks of life come together. In online communities, we are siloed into smaller groups. We don't really interact with one another. But in parks and playgrounds, we see the granny next door. We see the like immigrant mom. We see just a lot of different people from different walks of life coming together. And I would go to these playgrounds and meet people during COVID. And then I would start to pay attention to the play structures. And they were imaginative and nice, but I saw a lot of pirate ships. I saw a lot of playgrounds, a lot of like play castles. And I really started to think like, what if we could do something beyond that? What if we could teach about the technological world, whether it's about computers, but even quantum computing or AI or synthetic biology through a playground? And maybe the final thing I've learned with playgrounds and public spaces is when you build something physical, it lasts for a long time. So, for instance, in Helsinki, playgrounds are budgeted to last for 20 years. So the last time they modified, it was an end of life playground in Ruoholahti where we built the playground. It was 20 years ago in the early 90s, and now it was time for an update. So they are kind of like stubborn reminders of big ideas, and I think we need those in our public spaces that remind us of the values of science, the values of curiosity, the values of fearlessness. Because let's face it, like the computer towers you saw in the picture, they are quite high, and kids need to be really fearless to climb up there and have a sense of a big adventure to go about there. And I wouldn't have been ready to do this project in my 20s. I was ready to be a children's book author, but a lot of the ideas were not there yet. And I don't know, maybe it helps to have this idea of a constellation as a career, because I'm not limiting myself to say that I can only be this one thing, but I can also be a playground designer. And I don't know what in 10 years' time I will add to my constellation. Wherever you're in the world, you see the constellations in a different perspective. And I think that's true in life also, like at different ages and different lifestyles, life stages, the story of your career will look different.
So when you look at your constellation, somebody is asking, what are you most looking forward to in the
Oh
world
gosh, this is always the hardest question to go look into the future. Well, I do want to make more playgrounds, that's for sure. Like different themes, not only the computer one, but like synthetic biology. I want to maybe connect them to one another so that kids in Brussels could have a discussion with kids in Helsinki. I want to write more books. I think there's a lot in technology we don't talk about. Also for the grown-up world, I've been lucky. I've been given the gift of authors like Carlo Rovelli, this Italian physicist who writes beautifully about physics as a field. And I was never interested in physics as a teenager, but had I read Rovelli's book, I would have understood how poetic and beautiful physics can be. So I maybe want to do something like that to computer science, kind of try to explain these big ideas in a more poetic and more essayistic form. I do still want to work with schools. I think schools are the way we shape our societies. One educator can touch the life of so many kids, and that's how we really drive systemic change, if we can change how schools work. And yeah, probably also write more children's book at some point. I've been on a little pause with them for the past few years, but I have new adventures for Ruby in my head. So that's quite a lot of stars already.
There's a lot of stars in that constellation, but it's amazing to see how you are connecting the dots. That's wonderful. You also talked a lot about values, and there is one question here that is linked with diversity and inclusion and what's happening globally. So the question is,
Oh gosh,
what
yeah.
is your view about the step back is happening globally on diversity and inclusion in the public and
Yeah.
private sector? How should we react, and what should we do to keep things moving to the more
Yeah.
equal and inclusive world?
Well, I think one of the worst things we can do is react all the time. I think the algorithms want us to react, especially here in Europe. I think steadfastly building the kind of world you want to live in is the way I've at least, like on a personal level, been able to balance out what's happening in the world right now. I think there's people whose work it is to build policy, and they need to do a lot of compromises and build bridges instead of burning them. And then there's people whose job it is to project the kind of world they have in their head. And I kind of count myself towards that latter camp. And in some ways, words change and their meaning changes as we live through life. And for instance, I was often asked whether Ruby is a book for girls alone, because it was such a novel idea that there would be 10 years ago when the first books came out, a book for little girls with the hero being another little girl. But I already then said that it's not a book for girls alone, it's a book for girls and boys, because it's equally important for little boys to see girls as their role models and look up to them as problem solvers and future programmers. That's how that's the change I want to see in the world. And that's the strategy I've also decided to like go about in this. I'm trying to build a world that is just more colorful and inclusive and project the kinds of public spaces I would want to see in the world. And through that work, they hopefully are more inclusive and more diverse for a lot of other people too.
That's wonderful. Building bridges for an inclusive world. I think that
Mm.
connects very well to our call to action.
Yes.
So let's tell them what's this call to action and
Yeah.
what are we going to do next? Because this was just the first webinar of a series.
Mm.
But there are many more things behind that we could do. So can you
Yeah.
tell us what's the call to action?
So I'm an educator at my heart, and I think a story is a wonderful way to teach people about the world and give them ideas and so forth. But stories alone don't change the world unless you tie them to actions. So to that end, we are publishing on Code Week the Constellation Kit. So I showed you the little worksheet where you can map out your own constellation and start to like look for patterns and ideas. And we're writing up for educators, especially a little like instruction on how to use it in your classroom. So whether you work with teenage girls, boys, whoever, other educators, career counselors, we hope to see as many teachers, educators, girls, boys, whoever, European citizens start using this resource and thinking about what kind of constellation a career in technology might look like for them. Not to like fill a quota, not to like, I don't know, like raise the GDPs, but just for your own careers, your own passions, and how would you start to sort of map out those ideas and interests. So that's going to be available for you. And then we are also organizing a little mentoring session. So we'll do a raffle where free like selected winners will have a Zoom coffee date with me, and we'll walk together through your constellation and sort of your career ideas and your technological questions and concerns or ideas of like how might these things connect together. And you can be an educator, you can be a student, you can be a parent. It doesn't matter what your sort of role in life is or stage in a career. We'll just have a friendly chat for 30 minutes or so. And you'll find the instructions on the Code Week website for all of this later. So that's the call of action. I hope to see many, many night skies across Europe with careers in technology we just haven't imagined yet, combinations and interests and passions that are completely out there that no one can foresee in advance.
That's wonderful. And I think that concludes it so beautiful, the discussion that we had today and this first series of webinars inspiring girls in digital. But we have more come to come also for boys, also for educators, for parents, for everyone who really wants to make a difference and a change in this field. So thank you so much, Linda. Thank you so much to all our participants online. We will have this saved on our YouTube and the Code Week website, and look forward to seeing many of you building the constellations that you want. Thank you so much,
Amazing.
everyone.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.